For more than 2,500 years, generals, leaders, and strategists have studied one ancient book, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. It is quoted in military academies, its business schools, and leadership seminars around the world. Most people focus on its obvious lessons: battle tactics, deception, psychological warfare, and strategic positioning. But hidden inside this ancient text is something almost no one talks about. Sun Tzu wasn't just describing how to win wars. He was quietly explaining the financial logic behind war itself. In other words, he understood that the real battlefield wasn't just land or soldiers, it was the economy. And if you look closely, many modern financial and political systems still operate according to this same principle today. Sun Tzu lived during the Warring States period in ancient China, a time when rival kingdoms fought constantly for dominance. Armies marched across territories year after year, cities were destroyed, and borders shifted endlessly. But behind all the fighting was a massive problem. War was incredibly expensive. Armies required food, weapons, armor, horses, logistics, and continuous support from the population. Tens of thousands of soldiers needed to be supplied every single day. Most rulers believed the solution was simple: build larger armies and fight harder until victory was achieved. However, Sun Tzu saw something deeper that others ignored. War didn't just destroy soldiers, it destroyed the financial stability of a nation. And once the economy collapsed, the war was already lost. Inside The Art of War, Sun Tzu writes a line that completely challenges traditional thinking. There is no instance of a country benefiting from prolonged warfare. At first, it sounds like a philosophical observation, but it's actually an economic warning. Every day a war continues, resources disappear. Farmers are taken from their fields and turned into soldiers. Crops are not harvested. Trade routes become dangerous or collapse entirely. Governments must increase taxes to fund armies, and when taxes are not enough, rulers borrow or deplete their treasuries. The longer the war lasts, the weaker the country becomes internally, even if it appears strong on the battlefield. This is why one of Sun Tzu's most famous ideas is often misunderstood. He wrote that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Many people interpret this as psychological warfare or clever strategy, but there is also a powerful financial meaning behind it. If you can force your enemy to maintain huge armies, extend their supply lines, and spend enormous resources for long periods of time, their economy begins to collapse. In that situation, you don't need to defeat them directly. Their own financial strain defeats them. The true battlefield becomes the treasury. History repeatedly proved this idea correct. Some of the most devastating conflicts in history did not destroy nations through immediate defeat, but through slow economic exhaustion. Take the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta in ancient Greece. The conflict lasted nearly 3 decades. Both sides spent enormous amounts of resources trying to outlast each other. Armies were funded year after year, fleets were rebuilt repeatedly, and cities were pushed to their limits. In the end, even the victor emerged weakened. Trade networks collapsed, economies shrank, and political instability spread across the entire region. The war did not create prosperity for the winner, it damaged the entire Greek world. Sun Tzu understood that war produces hidden financial consequences that continue long after the battle's end. Governments historically rely on 3 main tools to fund wars: raising taxes, printing currency, and borrowing money. Taxes place pressure on the population. Printing money can lead to inflation and weaken the value of currency. Borrowing creates long-term debt that future generations must repay. Even if a nation wins the war militarily, these economic consequences can slowly weaken the country for decades afterward. Sun Tzu's warning was simple but powerful. The longer a war continues, the more damage it does to the internal stability of the state. For centuries, rulers attempted to solve this problem by accumulating more resources. They believed that larger empires with bigger treasuries could sustain longer wars without collapsing. But this often created the opposite effect. Wealthy empires could afford to start larger conflicts, which meant wars lasted longer and consumed even greater resources. The cycle repeated throughout history. Expansion led to conflict. Conflict required spending. Spending created financial strain. And eventually the empire weakened from within. Again and again, History showed that military power alone could not overcome the economic cost of prolonged war. Now fast forward to the modern world. Warfare looks very different today compared to ancient times, but the financial mechanics are surprisingly similar. Modern wars cost extraordinary amounts of money. Military technology, logistics, intelligence systems, and global operations require vast financial resources. The war in Afghanistan alone cost the United States more than $2 trillion over 20 years. The Iraq War added trillions more. These conflicts lasted far longer than initially expected, and the financial impact did not disappear when the wars ended. Costs continued through veteran care, rebuilding programs, long-term military commitments, and interest on the debt created to fund the wars. What makes modern conflicts different is the way governments finance them. Instead of relying only on immediate taxes or treasury reserves, governments today can borrow enormous amounts of money and distribute the cost across decades. They can issue government bonds, expand national debt, or even create new currency through central banking systems. This allows wars to appear financially manageable in the short term. However, the long-term consequences, debt accumulation, inflation, and economic imbalance often appear years later. In a strange way, modern financial systems delay the economic impact of war rather than eliminating it. This is where Sun Tzu's insight becomes surprisingly relevant again. He understood that the true cost of conflict grows over time. The longer resources are consumed, the harder it becomes to maintain economic stability. Even powerful nations must eventually confront financial limits. Military strength may determine the outcome of battles, but economic strength determines how long a nation can sustain those battles. If the economy weakens enough, the nation becomes vulnerable regardless of military victories. The deeper lesson Sun Tzu left behind is that war is ultimately a financial strategy. Time multiplies costs, supply chains stretch, resources disappear. Governments make decisions that prioritize short-term survival over long-term stability. Eventually, someone runs out of money, and when that happens, the outcome of the war becomes inevitable. Victory is not always determined by the largest army, but by the side that preserves its resources while exhausting the resources of its opponent. There are three important lessons hidden in Sun Tzu's thinking. First, war is always an economic equation. Every battle requires resources, and if the financial cost becomes too high, victory loses its meaning. Second, prolonged conflict is far more dangerous than quick, decisive action. Long wars drain economies and destabilize societies from within. Third, the treasury is often the true battlefield. Military strength matters, but economic endurance determines the final outcome. The most unsettling part of Sun Tzu's insight is that wars are not only fought with weapons. They are fought with money, logistics, and time. Sometimes the real damage happens quietly, long after the battles end. Economies carry the burden, debts grow, and financial systems adapt to support the consequences. By the time the full cost becomes visible, the war itself may already be history. Understanding this perspective changes how we view conflict throughout history. It reveals that the strongest strategy is not always overwhelming force, but careful preservation of resources. Sun Tzu understood that nations collapse when their financial foundations erode. And once that foundation cracks, even the most powerful empires can fall. If you want to explore more hidden patterns like this, the economic strategies behind history, the financial systems that shape global power, and the unseen forces influencing modern economies, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes the most important battles in history are not fought with swords or missiles. They are fought inside the systems that control money, resources, and time.